Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast. I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Peter Kozodoy of Honest to Greatness. Peter, it's awesome to have you on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here, Gresh.
No problem. Super excited to have you on. And before we jumped in, I want to read a little bit more about Peter so you can hear about all the awesome things that he's doing. And Peter is an Inc. 5000 serial entrepreneur, TEDx speaker, and business coach who works with organizations and their leaders to help them overcome self-limiting bullshit and use honesty to achieve greatness. His articles on leadership and entrepreneurship have been featured in Forbes, Inc., HuffPost, PR Daily, and many more. He holds a BA in economics from Brandeis University and an MBA from Columbia Business School. And he's the author of Honest to Greatness, How Today's Greatest Leaders Use Brutal Honesty to Achieve Massive Success. Peter, are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
Born ready, Gresh. Let's do it.
Let's do it. So to kick everything off, I wanted to rewind the clock a little bit and hear a little bit more about what I call your CEO story, and we'll let you get started with the business.
Oh, boy. Well, Gresh, I'm going to, the thing about writing a book about honesty is I have to be honest. So my story starts way back as a 17-year-old Peter with two dreams. The first was to go to the Olympics as a figure skater. I was a very serious competitive figure skater, knew I was going to go to the Olympics, trained for, skated for almost 18 years. So that was dream number one. And dream number two at 17 was I was going to Harvard. I was convinced I was going to Harvard. I grew up outside of Boston. There was only one school. Well, by 18, I was clear I was not going to make the Olympics. I just couldn't keep my nerves together enough to compete well. And I applied to Harvard. Harvard sent me a letter back saying, thank you, but no thank you. Don't call us, we'll call you. And so that was pretty devastated, Gresh, I'm not going to lie. And so I ended up going to Brandeis, and in every single elective I could, I was taking business courses because I was just fascinated by business. And I don't know about you, but I love money. Do you love money?
A little bit.
Money's fantastic.
Yes.
So I was just like this whole idea of business. I was like, this is great. So I got out of college and I started what was then a video production company with my business partner. Mm-hmm. And we had pretty much no idea what we were doing as a video production company. We were shooting like $800 television commercials for local car dealers, which is exactly as glamorous as it sounds. And I just remember thinking like, wow, if we could only do more of these, we'd be rich. Like that's the secret to millions of dollars. Right. Well, obviously I didn't take enough math classes in college because if I had paused and done the math, I would have realized that that was a really stupid business plan for a lot of different reasons. So what ended up happening is we began to pivot. We were getting hired by other marketing agencies for video production, and we realized that those agencies, frankly, were terrible. They mistreated their clients. Their strategies weren't that good. They would overcharge. They would miss deadlines. We were like, we can do that better, right? Classic entrepreneur. Well, we can do that better. Right. Now, the thing about thinking you can do it better is it's great for being an entrepreneur and having that drive. And on the flip side, you actually have to go out and do it better. So, we slapped a new name on ourselves and we're like, yep, we're a full service marketing agency now. Of course, we didn't have any full service clients until one day, the VP of marketing of a local college called, and we had been doing video work for them, filming their students for web videos. And she said, hey guys, so we're actually going to go with a full service agency now. We finally decided to bring in a few to do a pitch. And I want to know if you'd like to come in, do you even have the resources for this? And so we sort of put the phone on hold and we were like, okay, well, can we handle an account like that? It was like $1 million account. Like, do we have like media buyer? No. Like a graphic designer that can, no, don't have that. Web developers, no, don't have that either. So, pretty much there was no way we could handle this account. So we got back on the phone and we said, absolutely, we'd love to pitch. You give us the time and we'll be there. And so we assembled a team of, folks we had met over the years, and we go into the pitch, and at the end of the pitch, we show a video of the students that we had been filming because we had been listening to them in the editing room for, a year. And so we play this video and then we reveal this tagline that we were going to build the whole campaign on. And the room goes quiet and the president looks down and doesn't say anything. And we're like biting our fingernails saying, okay, well, this isn't good, right? And she looks back up and she said, where did you get this? I've been looking for this for years. And we were tempted, Gresh, to be like, well, we're the biggest bunch of geniuses you've ever met. That's how we figured it out. But of course, that would have been a lie. And as you know, my thing is brutal honesty. So instead, we said, we actually didn't come up with this at all. Your own students gave it to me. Your own people, the people who matter most, your customers. This is from them. This is what they're saying about you. That's why it's true. That's why it's honest and authentic to who you are. And so that really was a springboard for us to, we picked up that client and then picked up several more, ended up on the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing companies in America for a couple of years in a row, and just took, a pretty much wild ride until tragedy struck for me personally, Gresh. I don't know if you've experienced this. It was a terrible thing happened to me. I turned 30. Oh my! Has this happened to you?
I have.
Oh my good! I don't know how do people survive this? I don't know. I was doing a keynote once to a big business group, and I made that joke, although it wasn't a joke. We'll get into that in a moment. And this energetic older woman bolts up in the front row, and she goes, "That's happened to me twice." And I said, "Well, how did you survive it?" Because I didn't even survive it once. Like, that's pretty good, lady. Like, don't know how you did it. So 30 was pretty devastating to me. And for all intents and purposes, Gresh, I mean, I should have been happy. I had built $1 million company by that point. I had great working relationships. I just married my wife. We were flipping a house. I mean, life was fine. But as you likely know, happiness is not linear. And so, for the first time in a long time, it struck me that I had so much more to accomplish and do. And that somewhere along the line, because of those two big failures I had when I was 17, I had stopped being honest with myself about what the greatest Peter looked like and how I defined success and greatness. And I had stopped going for those massive goals, thinking that, well, I was already a failure, so I guess I have to settle for second best. And after that, Gresh, I mean, a bunch of things happened. I mean, I achieved more in the year or two after turning 30 than I had in the 10 years prior. I mean, that's where all the accolades that you listed off, TEDx talk, being picked up in Forbes and Inc. and television, radio interviews, and writing a book that's been endorsed by Barbara Corcoran, and all these amazing things. And going back to business school at Columbia University, I really got my ass in gear, and realized that there was a lot more stuff I had to accomplish. And what was interesting, Gresh, is along the road to building an Inc. 5000 marketing agency, we worked with folks from startups to Fortune 500s and even Warren Buffett himself. In fact, maybe I'll tell you the story about the time I accidentally served as his bodyguard. That's another story. But the point is, I was fascinated by the fact that we were engineering these marketing strategies for our clients, and some of them just crushed it. I mean, they'd get like a 500% return, stay with us for years, awesome. Others give the same care and attention and strategy to, and they would just like blow up in the launch pad. Could not get out of their own way. The executives descended into infighting and politics and bullshit. And it was like mind-boggling to me. And I used to think, wow, what a bunch of morons. But, I'm the moron in that scenario because, obviously you have to be an intelligent human being to get to any sort of executive level. What I ended up figuring out, Gresh, was I think a little more serious, is that executives who thrive versus executives who don't, it's actually a matter of honesty. And it didn't hit, I kind of knew this in the back of my mind, that there were executives who were simply willing to be honest with themselves, and we can get into what that means, and those who weren't. But it wasn't until I turned 30 and had my own crisis of honesty that it sort of crystallized. And I realized, hey, this isn't just, brutal honesty isn't just a method for marketing, authenticity, what your customers are really saying. It's actually a framework to achieve anything in life. We have to get honest with ourselves first. Otherwise, we're going to row for miles in the wrong direction, or in a direction we never even wanted in the first place. And that's sort of been now my platform for a while. And this is, by the way, very surprising to me. One, that I would, have to talk about something we all learned in preschool. But the other, quite honestly, I mean, I was like voted most likely to continue being a total jerk in high school. Like, for me to be talking about like honesty and empathy, and trust me, this is a very surprising thing. And yet I found time after time, Gresh, that it is the secret to achieving anything in life.
Nice. I absolutely love that. And I appreciate you for being honest, being brutally honest, to stay on brand as well, too, because I think it's just so important to be able to do that, to kind of see that, as you said, when you're talking with your clients or customers, or you're engaging with your friends, whatever that might be, that brutal honesty, take things to another level. So I wanted to hear a little bit more about your book and everything that you're doing there. Could you take us through exactly what that is, if that touches on that, and how that serves the clients you have?
Absolutely. So let's talk about what I mean by brutal honesty for a moment. And let's talk about what it isn't. My book is full of wonderful case studies and interviews with CEOs from, Warren Buffett to Ray Dalio, the largest hedge fund in the world, to Quicken Loans, the Ritz-Carlton, Domino's Pizza, Bethany Frankel and her $100 million alcohol brand. Wonderful, wonderful stories. And they all have one thing in common, which is that they use brutal honesty, not as a touchy-feely core value, like everyone should be honest and nice, like that's cool too. But I'm talking about using brutal honesty as a strategy to achieve business outcomes, to make ridiculous amounts of money, to dominate your industry. This is a business book. It's not an ethics book. I've just happened to find honesty works. So one of the CEOs in the book makes a really good point. He says, if you're flying in an airplane and the pilots come over the intercom and they say, well, folks, we've never seen storm clouds like that before. So why does everyone put their seatbelt on? Not quite sure we're going to get through this. Is that honest, Gresh? Yeah, of course, but it's probably not helpful, right? So there are times when brutal honesty should not mean and should never mean just candor, just like telling the truth, blurting out the truth at all times. Any parent will tell you it's probably a bad idea to just tell your kids the whole truth all the time, right? In fact, it can be harmful in some senses. So that's what honesty is not. What I do in the book is define honesty as it relates to achieving outcomes and profitability. And that means defining it over three things. The first is honest about what I call the community. In other words, as leaders of our personal lives or professional lives, we have to get honest about what's going on in the world around us. It's 2020 right now. We need to get honest about the pandemic and how that's influencing society, gender bias, the horrendous racial discrimination that we clearly have not done a good enough job of dealing with in this country. All of these things are things that we can't just put our heads in the sand. They don't go away. They need honest dialogue. They need transparency. They need change. And so as businesses and as people, we operate in this environment. We need to be honest about what those trends are, because if we miss a shift, then we end up being tone deaf and also missing important trends. And I'll give you examples of these in a moment. The second layer, Gresh, is being honest with and about the others around you. Now, there are two phases to this. One is being honest with the others around you, and sometimes that is what we need to do. And I have example after example. And CEOs actually just tell it like it is. People end up trusting them, and they do really well. But also, we have a responsibility to be honest about the others around us. And that can be customers and suppliers, or direct reports, or fellow executives, or your spouse and kids and aunts and uncles, whoever. But what I mean by be honest about them is be honest about where they're coming from, what their belief system is, the facts on which they're making critical decisions and forming opinions, about the fact that the way they think is probably very different than the way we think. When you look at the divisiveness we have in our nation, it is because we don't do a good enough job being honest about other people and asking open-ended questions to better understand. Instead, we've taken up positions and we're too busy trying to stuff our own opinion down another person's throat without understanding pretty much anything there is to honestly understand. And it's a real shame. And I'm hoping, Gresh, that my book can change some minds and help people alter their speech and be more open-ended and open-minded with the way they go about being honest with and about others. And the third layer is being honest with and about yourself, with your own biases and self-limiting beliefs as a leader, with your core values and what you stand for. Who are you really? What do you really want? Not with the self-limiting bullshit piled on about what your mother told you want, or your kids tell you want, or what all these outside influences. No. What do you want? And what is it honestly going to take to get there? And what I've found, Gresh, is that leaders and organizations that embrace honesty on all three levels, they end up as a fundamentally different entity. Think about yourself. Honest Gresh is very different than Gresh who's lying to himself about who he is and what he wants, or the people he's surrounded himself with. Or do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So once you're honest Gresh, then what happens is, I call it the hourglass of honesty. You've kind of descended from community to others to self. Once you're honest, you actually begin to change the others around you. You begin to alter your inner circle. You hire different people. You choose different customers and vendors, and you really make changes in the others. And through that process, you can bend the community to your will. You can do extraordinary things. Let me give you an example. I have so many. This is one of my favorites, and I feel kind of bad because I've repeated this one so often, but I love it. I don't know if you remember back in 2008, 2009, Domino's Pizza realized it had a problem, which is that people didn't like its pizza, the product that it's named for. So as you can imagine, that's a problem. In fact, it didn't stop there. They even put their pizza in the boxes of their competitors, and people said, oh, actually, I like that a little better, which meant they didn't just have a pizza problem, they had a brand problem, okay? So listen, they could have just altered their pizza, made it a little better, ran an ad, hey, we upgraded our tomato sauce, come in and try it, right? But they didn't. Instead, the brand new CEO, J. Patrick Doyle, went on national television and told the world that their pizza sucked. He said, I'm sorry, turns out our pizza's not very good. You deserve better than this. We're going to fix it. They transparently posted all of the results of their focus groups and their interviews and what people were saying. And then they invited cameras in and showed everyone, these are the changes we're making. This is how we're upgrading everything. This is how we're retraining all our people. This is how we're making this right for you because we owe that to you. And if you had paid attention to that honesty, Gresh, and bought their stock in about 2010, you would have had an over 3,000% return over the next 10 years. Just wildly profitable for shareholders. And all you had to do was see that, wow, this is an organization that understands where it's at, that's being honest about where it's at and what it needs to change, and then they're going and doing it, and they're showing us. That honesty and transparency is something I've seen over and over again in the companies and leaders and organizations that I profile in the book.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. No, I definitely appreciate you sharing that. Do you feel like that is what makes what I like to call your secret sauce, the thing you feel kind of sets you apart, is that brutal honesty and being able to kind of distinguish that and know about that on a deeper level?
I mean, the reason I wrote the book, I actually set out to write a marketing book, okay? Mm-hmm. Never set out for it to be an honesty book. As I told you earlier, this had to crystallize for me over many years. And when I submitted this marketing book to my agent, the one who signed me, he was, as soon as he signed me, he was like, oh, this is really cool. But by the way, this is not a marketing book. This is a book about honesty. And I was like, well, clearly you didn't read the title page because it says right on it, it's a marketing book. My own blinders, right? And when I was flipping through it, I realized like, wow, he's right. Like I keep coming back to just be honest and authentic. People can smell the BS. They don't want it anymore. There's too much transparency in the world. And I stepped back and realized this was a much bigger issue. And so part of why I wrote the book was it's just in me to be an author. That was part of my, 30 quarter life crisis. I knew I had a book in me. And the other is I'm just sort of generally pissed off that people are full of crap. People and leaders and organizations. I mean, turn on the TV. What do you see? And it doesn't have to be that way. It's actually not effective. It erodes trust. It makes it so people don't act in unison. So, it boggles my mind. And so, Gresh, what we noticed working as a marketing partner is oftentimes we were too late in the process. The CEO had handed this edict down to a VP of marketing or a CMO, and it's like, well, that's what the CEO wants. And we'd be left over and over saying, well, that's stupid. And here's why. So my hope with the book is that I get to the level where it matters, to the executive team. And already I'm beginning to work with executive teams to help them use brutal honesty to get out of their own minds and to realize that the person who has the least in common with the CEO is probably the customer they're trying to reach. I mean, you think about like the CEO of Domino's Pizza versus the 20-year-old college kid that orders Domino's Pizza 3 times a week. They could not be more different, right? And yet we have leaders who allow their own biases to influence the way they communicate and the way they structure their business. I can't tell you how many times we were ordered to do marketing activities so the CEO could see those activities, having nothing to do with the target market, by the way. And we'd say like, we can put a billboard there, but your target market's not looking at billboards. Well, I know, but it's between my house and the office, so I like to see it. It's like, okay, we'll spend $5,000 a month on that if you want, but that's not going to help you. It's actually counter to your goals. And so my hope for this book is I get into the rooms and conversations before they start making operational decisions and marketing decisions and all that, because without honesty, we're plowing ahead in a direction that doesn't make sense and doesn't work. And we see it in companies, Wells Fargo fake account scandal, the Volkswagen diesel emissions scandal. Everything comes out, right? So You may as well be honest about those things and fix them where they count.
Absolutely. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and I wanted to ask you for what I call a CEO hack. So this could be like an app, a book, or a habit that you have. What's something that makes you personally more effective and efficient?
Ask 2 questions. First, is that true? And how do I know? Man, if people could just stop whatever they're doing, doesn't matter if it's in business or forming an opinion or looking at a news headline or whatever, is what I just saw, heard true? And how do I know? Before you react to it. We've gotten into such a reactive state in this country, and it kills me, because if we just took a deep breath, reflected, asked more questions, as I said earlier, things would be so much better.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I wanted to ask you now for what I call a CEO nugget. So that could be a word of wisdom or a piece of advice, or it might be something you would tell a client, or if you hopped into a time machine, you would tell your younger business self.
Well, if I had to build a time machine and give my younger self a word of advice, it would be stop worrying. Stop worrying. There's not, as my business partner says, worry doesn't solve anything. And there's so much we don't know. I mean, I'm getting kind of probably deep and off tangent here, but I had a very wise mentor, an entrepreneur, much more successful than I, tell me, life and business, it's like driving a car from Boston to Los Angeles. There's never a point at which you're going to be able to see the entire road. You can only see the 50 yards in front of you at any given time, and that's it. So for you to worry about what it's like to cross the Rocky Mountains when you're in the middle of Pennsylvania, probably not helpful. There's a lot more you could be taking in. So, I've always sort of adopted that. And so I coach a lot of entrepreneurs now, Gresh. And, this relates directly to brutal honesty. And most of what I do with them, 99% of business problems that are brought to me are really personal problems in disguise. And so these principles of like, there's no need to worry about, what's really, everything you can't see. And by the way, you're not worrying about the things you should be worrying about, all of those mindset, pulling that ship around to where it's supposed to be. I've always been shocked to learn how entrepreneurship, as I always say, is 10% business, 100% about people, and 1,000% about the self. And so, working with entrepreneurs has shown me even more how much what happens in between our ears counts and produces so much better results, so many more profits, if we can just kind of get into a situation where you have a good coach, a good group, a good mentor to guide you through those things. I can't say enough about how important that is to getting honest with yourself, having a partner, a thought partner to bring it out of you, because we can't do this by ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Success is a team sport, and your environment will determine your altitude. And so I wanted to ask you now for what I call my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. We're hoping to have different quote unquote CEOs on this show. So Peter, what does being a CEO mean to you?
To me, it means having complete accountability and personal responsibility for your life. And notice I say for your life, because I find that too seldom people understand, like, especially entrepreneurs, when we're talking about business, right? If I'm a CEO or I'm an entrepreneur, like, I have complete control over the lifestyle I build. And yet I meet and have worked with so many leaders who have built a life for themselves through their business that they actually don't even want. They're like, I thought, and I went through this myself. Like, I thought success was multiple offices and clients around the world. And we had 30 people. Like, we were up to a big organization. I looked around and I was like, this is not happiness. Right. Like, happiness for me is working at home and having, systems that I deploy and being able to take off 7 hours a day and work one. Like, these are things that CEOs have control of. But I think because they have set assumptions about themselves, about happiness, about success that aren't true, they drift. And so to me, a real CEO is someone who takes full control over the way they structure their lifestyle and, by extension, the way they structure their business.
Absolutely. No, I love that perspective. A lot of times we're like the artists, we get to paint the picture of what we hope to see in our life and in our business as well too. So Peter, truly appreciate that definition. I appreciate your time even more. What I wanted to do is pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional you want to let our readers and listeners know. And of course, how best they can get a hold of you, get a copy of the book, and find out about all those things you're working on.
For sure. So come have an honest conversation with me. I'm at honest2greatness.com, honest2greatness.com. You can take the 21-question honesty quiz, which will tell you what honesty profile you fit into and how honest you really are, if you're brave enough to know. That's on the website. And I have a bonus page particularly geared towards business owners and founders. That's at peterkozodoy.com/bonus. And when you buy multiple copies, you get all kinds of stuff. time with me, bonus classes I've taught in the past, tickets to my annual summit. I mean, all kinds of good stuff. So by all means, check that out, peterkozodoy.com/bonus.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Peter. We will have the links and information in the show notes. And I appreciate your time. Appreciate you being brutally honest. And I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day.
My pleasure, Gresh.
All right. And I'll cut it off here. Hello. This is Gresh again from the I Am CEO podcast. And I had a phenomenal interview with Peter Kozodoy of Honest to Greatness. He has a phenomenal book and loads of great value. So, Peter, I wanted to pass you the mic just so that people can learn a little bit more about you and all the awesome things you're doing and what we can find of value, especially in that book that you have.
Sure thing. So yeah, I'm happy to give you a couple stories. Well, I think one in particular would be really good for your audience to hear. As you know, I grew a marketing agency to the multi-million-dollar level, Inc. 5000 list for a couple of years in a row, and now I coach a lot of entrepreneurs. And invariably, Gresh, the entrepreneurs who come to me, 99% of their business problems are personal problems in disguise, and it's preventing them from earning the type of income that they tell me they want. I'll give you a great example. A couple of years ago, I was working with a guy who had developed this bolt-on device for water companies. So they'd literally like attach it into a pipe, and the way it measured the flow and other things, it could actually save that water utility money, which is great for the water utility, great for taxpayers, right? And also, he would make a lot of good money on this if he could just get it installed. So he had installed a few, and I was saying to him, we were just started working together. So what's the problem here? It seems like this ROI is very clear. It saves them money. They can see what the time horizon is for getting that investment back. Why aren't you reaching out to different water utilities and just having sales conversations? He said, I can't do that. I said, you can't reach out to, he said, no, I can't. I'm very uncomfortable with that. I'm not good at selling. I said, okay, well, let's unpack that for a little bit. Say you're not good at selling. Which part don't you think you're good at? It's like, well, I mean, I can sell it. I mean, it's easy to sell. I know the industry really well. I said, well, then what's the problem? He said, I don't want to call these people up and set a sales appointment. I said, why? He said, well, because I hate when people cold call me, and I don't want to be that guy that cold calls everyone else. I said, interesting. Okay. So that you're pretty set in stone on that. He said, absolutely. I won't do it. I said, okay, fine. So let's keep going on this. Ask a couple questions. I think what you're saying is that the water utilities that have found you so far through a mutual connection or a trade show or whatever, they've liked your product and they've bought it and they've saved money. He said, yep, absolutely. I was like, oh, that sounds good. Okay. So just so I understand, the companies that find you get to save money. He said, yep. I said, but the companies that don't find you naturally don't get to save money. He said, well, no, I mean, yeah, right, because I don't want to cold call. Right. So what you're saying is that the water utilities that aren't lucky enough to find you, they don't deserve to save money. Their taxpayers don't deserve to save money. And is that really what you're saying? Well, I mean, when you put it that way, I don't know. So it's like, here was somebody who had decided in his head that he didn't want to be a certain type of person that he thought of as being bad, when in fact the outcome, if he was really honest and thought all the way through, would be incredibly positive. And I find this a lot with entrepreneurs I work with who aren't comfortable setting up a selling system and implementing the system. And of course, I'm a sales and marketing guy. So I'm all about like, what's the system? How are you going to generate leads and profits and so on? So just that small mindset shift, what does it allow him to do? Unstick himself. Now he can actually say, okay, well, if that key assumption I made is incorrect, let's just assume it's completely false and flip to the other side. The question is, what's the system I can set up to save water utilities and taxpayers a lot of money? Well, that question's easy to answer, right? If only we can think about it that way. It's always been remarkable to me, Gresh, how we entrepreneurs get stuck in our own minds and how important our own mindset and helping someone unstick us is to achieving success. In fact, once a month now, I run a group for entrepreneurs called Forum. It is 100% confidential, and we get extremely vulnerable with each other about what's really going on in our business life, personal life, family life, because unless we unearth those and dump them on the table and be honest about them, we can't fix them. They just stick in our minds, preventing us from moving forward. And it doesn't have to be that way. Get a mentor, get a coach, get into a group, get help.
Absolutely. No, I love that. And I appreciate you for telling that story. And as you said, so many times we have and create a story about what is, the truth or what is reality and all of those things. And I love, you articulating that and obviously sharing that with us, because I think so many times we can go through that exercise and kind of see if what we think about is really true, or if it can be completely different. We can look at it in a completely different way. And I think that, as you said, your environment, the people that you're around, and that's one of the things we talked about during the interview, can determine how far you go, how successful you are. And so you have to be very aware about those people you have around you, the questions that you're asking, whether it be coach, consult, all those different people that can really steer you in the right direction.
100%.
Awesome. And Peter, for people that might have just heard this section, what is a great way for them to get a hold of you, to get a copy of the book and find out about all the awesome things you're doing?
Yep. Come hang out, have an honest conversation with me at honest2greatness.com. That's honest2greatness.com. There you can take the 21-question honesty quiz. It'll tell you what honesty profile you are and how honest you really are, if you're brave enough to know. You can buy a copy of the book, Honest to Greatness, which was just endorsed by Barbara Corcoran. So I'd love for you to pick up a copy and see what you think, and see for yourself if it's honest or a bunch of crap. That's a good thing about being an author about honesty. You can tell me. And I'm on all the social channels. I'm probably most active on Instagram at Peter Kozodoy. Kozodoy is my handle on most everything.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Peter. We will have the links and information in the show notes, and definitely appreciate the brutal honesty during the bonus section, but also during the podcast as well too. And I appreciate it again. I know it'll have a tremendous effect on so many businesses and organizations, and appreciate you again. And I hope you have a great rest of the day.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.